We can't hear you, Jonathan. We can't hear you.
I get so excited, Britt. What's going on, successors? What's going on? Welcome to Speak Your Success in the Morning. I'm your host, Jonathan Jones, and you're in for another great and exciting episode today. We got a phenomenal guest, but before we even begin and kick off the show, I got to bring out my co-host. Come on out, producer Britt. Come on, come on, come on.
Hey,
How we
hey,
feeling?
hey.
How you feeling? How you feeling? What today is Wednesday. The week is
Today's
rolling.
Wednesday.
Winning
No,
Wednesday.
you think it's rolling? I think the week is going by a little slow to me. I'm like, I wish it
Okay.
was Thursday so it could be Friday and I could just relax. But I'm here. Good morning. Happy Wednesday, April 9th. 9 days, y'all, to my birthday. Okay, don't forget.
Start the
Don't forget.
countdown.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Start
Producer
the
Britt
countdown.
Holiday. Yes, Producer Britt Holiday.
All
Yes.
right.
How you
All
feeling,
right.
Jonathan?
I'm good. I'm good. I think I actually got a decent amount of rest last night. So
Yeah,
I feel pretty good.
that's
I
good.
feel pretty good.
I don't have my what I saw scrolling today because we got a great guest on the show today. I'm excited to hear this interview. But one thing that I did not know is that the head coach for Houston, the Cougars,
Mm-hmm.
his
Mm-hmm.
son is his assistant coach. I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
I
and
found that
say,
out yesterday.
Britt, the way that contract is structured is
Uh-huh.
crazy.
Yeah.
Just like how we always talk about Nepo babies and how we
Yeah.
always love what that looks like.
Love a good Nepo.
This
Mhm.
This is a perfect example of a Nepo baby. And this is a
Mm.
perfect example of setting up your son for success or setting
Right.
up, your child for success. Because
Yeah.
he got him as the assistant coach. And
Hmm.
then he's even the head coach in waiting is the title that
Yes, yes, that's what I
yeah.
read. Yep, that's exactly what I
Mhm.
read. So that's cool. Love when you Nepo right. But all right, Jonathan, who we got on the who we got on the show?
Oh man. All right. So look, producer Britt, look,
Mhm.
like I told you before, like I'm
Mhm.
I'm super excited today because y'all, we have the one and only, Mr. Rashad Campbell. And y'all, today's guest, when it comes to somebody who's been bridging the gap between money and sports, Rashad gets this and he gets it right with over a decade of experience and impacting more than 50,000 athletes. He's a former D1 athlete. He's a financial pro, and he's really leading the charge at advanced NIL and across the NIL landscape education as a whole. So he's somebody who makes sure that athletes not only win on, but also off the field with their finances. Rashad, welcome to the show, good sir. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Thanks for having me, Jonathan. I'm excited to be here, man. I know we've connected a few times. I think the first time was down in Atlanta, but it's great to
Mhm.
finally, share space online and have this conversation.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. I mean, Rashad, I'm excited to get you on, bro, because it seems like just in this overall space of, NIL, so many people are experts, but at the same time, there's not any real true guidelines around NIL, loose guidelines, right?
Hmm.
And people are being advisors and doing all these things. But man, this is a space that I feel you've really uh, been in, and we're gonna get to that in a second. But before Rashad, before we get into that, where are you from, Rashad? Please take a little moment, tell people a little bit about yourself.
No, definitely appreciate that. So I'm from Philadelphia. I live in Philadelphia. I went to Cornell University, studied applied economics and management there. Also played football. I was fortunate enough to be captain of the team, and that was really my plan. I wanted to go pro in my sport, try to aggressively for 6 months after graduating, and it just wasn't in the cards. Wasn't fast enough, wasn't tall enough, whatever you want to kind of say. I could have kind of grinded it out and, went the Arena League route, went the Canadian football, but I was like, I wanted to be at the show, NFL, or I wanted to do something a little bit more impactful with my life. So I actually started coaching. And after coaching for a few months, I got into private debt and equity. So I was
Mhm.
working in a private debt and equity firm, effectively selling alternative investments to advisors, learning about the financial services industry. And during that time period, I learned that some financial advisors told their clients everything, almost too much. Some told their
Mhm.
clients nothing. And there were a few that, told them exactly what they needed to know to be dangerous and to understand, their financial game plan. And that kind of opened my eyes to there needs to be better communication around finances and that there are a lot of gaps as it relates to financial advisors and then their end user clients ultimately in financial services. And so it got me interested in really the communication around finance and that kind of field. But also my younger brother, he got drafted to the Cleveland Browns. So he went to Northwestern, was a smart kid, econ major, worked at Goldman Sachs. So he had a good foundation of knowledge. But when he
Oh yeah.
transitioned to the pros and had gaps in his knowledge as it pertained to building a team around him, it made me recognize that, hey, a lot of the top tier pro athletes, they graduate early, right? They don't get their
Uh-huh.
degree, so they may and also may have been focused on sport more than their actual academics. So if he had gaps in his knowledge, I know that was something that was huge for the rest of the pro league. And so that gap made me recognize, one, there need to be more financial education, but also financial advisor due diligence. A lot of guys come out with an agent, but not necessarily a financial advisor. And when you think
Mm.
about who they're putting around them, who's managing their money, that's a huge decision. And so for my brother, he went 2 years without one because he didn't feel comfortable with the person his agent suggested. And then he just saved his money, invested in his retirement account that the NFL provides. But he ended up having an 8-year career. And for him, at year 2, he was like, hey, I'm ready to have somebody, I'm ready to onboard the team
Oh
as it
yeah.
relates to that. And so we met with 6 people. And I think during that process, we realized by meeting 3, he took ownership of the process. 4, 5, and 6, he asked and he dominated the conversation. But again, asking qualitative and quantitative questions to really highlight, is this person a fit for me? What are their fees? What can I expect as it pertains to an ongoing relationship? And so it just made me hyper aware of building a team around you. I actually created his social media. He was one of those people that just showed up and did his thing. He wasn't really too
Sure.
focused on like off the field, his brand off the field. And so that also kind of highlighted a few things for me because that
Uh-huh.
window is small, right? And so just in terms of maximizing that window, I always thought that like, hey, you might as well build your social media and things of that nature. So it really just helped me kind of get into that space. And so I left corporate in 2017 to get back into the world of
Oh.
sports and money. And so that's kind of what happened, how I got here. And it jump started my career to really help focus on protecting athletes, predominantly just focusing on money. But as our team has expanded, I've added additional skill sets, just learning from mentors like Lou Fellum, Courtney Ultimus, who are on my team,
Mhm.
about legal, life skills, and things of that nature. So I'm excited to be here, man. And the journey really shows me that as you transition and as you kind of think about life beyond just being a student,
Mhm.
um, you're almost establishing yourself as a business. And we call it, becoming an athlete CEO, but really just the people you put around you. It's kind of like the people you hire at a business. You want to hire the right people and ultimately set yourself up for success. And I think NIL is helping people learn,
Uh-huh.
gain, acquire important knowledge at a much earlier age. So
Rashad, man, one. I think that's phenomenal. Just the way that you really dove in and you assisted your brother. But bro, like I just am excited that you're here because Rashad, like I really can't get past the fact that seeing what's happening in the landscape because I read the articles, I read the headlines, and there's athletes signing over here and not getting clarity, right? Or athletes are getting major deals, and at the same time then they didn't put any money to the side for tax preparation or any of
mhm.
these things. So I'm just grateful for the work that you're doing, and really glad to have you here, man. So we can get into some real NIL talk with somebody who, like you said in the bio, you've impacted 50,000 plus athletes. Because every time I look up, you're at Temple, you're at Ohio State, you're over here, you're in Atlanta, and you're all the places doing all the things. So from where you were, like when you were talking about you were assisting your brother, where's the part for you to where like you really dove into you really starting to begin to assist other athletes just in this NIL space? Where did that happen?
Yeah, so great question. In 2017, when I left corporate, basically the thought process was we were just going to work with pro athletes, right? Because we saw the gap, we understood that they had, and this is just full transparency, we understood that they had enough money to basically set money aside to, hey, if I put money aside and invest in my due diligence process of a financial advisor sooner. So let's say you would, let's say, I don't know what our starting fees were, but let's say it was $5,000, right? We knew that
Hmm.
pro athletes had $5,000 that they could invest in a due diligence process now that would save them tens of thousands later, right? When you think about transitioning from particular brokerage to another brokerage, maybe the fees of transferring assets. And so our goal was, hey, if we ask all of these pro athletes what their process was for onboarding, did they maintain the same advisor? We would basically highlight more gaps. So we did that, talked to about 50 pro athletes. Everybody said, hey, I think this is a great resource. But like a lot of athletes that we talked to, like they're busy, they're really
For sure.
consumed with whether it's their family in the off season, their season in season. And so they say, hey,
Uh-huh.
this is a great resource. I wish I had it sooner. They were comfortable where they were, but a lot of them had multiple advisors because they went with who their agent suggested or because they didn't just do their homework in the front end. So they said,
Mm,
hey, I wish I had this sooner. So that made us realize, wait, we should just be doing this in college. This is where everybody is. Let's go to college
uh,
campuses. So our first
okay.
client was actually Tennessee Chattanooga. It was the nephew of my business partner Courtney. We were down at Tennessee with Tennessee Chattanooga, and it was so
Okay.
interesting because it was like everything we thought would happen in a session, it happened, right? And when you're
Mm,
doing these hypothetical things and you haven't really presented to a large football team, we've done it with high schools. We've done it like I've been speaking to high school since I graduated college back in 2012, but actually getting on campus and then you recognize, all right, these are young men and women that are preparing for the real world and these foundational principles still apply. We were like, wow,
for
we got
sure.
something special here. And then our first paid client a few months later was University of Georgia football team. And so that was huge for us because
Mm,
the timing was when DeAndre Swift was there, who was a Philly native, and I'm from Philly. And so me and him actually knew each other and we would work together in a different capacity after the fact, just in terms of training and preparing for the draft. But it was one of those things where you recognize your value because one, you see the impact immediately. But then also
uh-huh.
when you get into the larger stages of working with SEC schools, you recognize that they too still need the education and resources. So it was the
Man.
feedback from the pro side that basically said, hey, this financial education is needed. But it wasn't until 2019 when California basically highlighted that, hey, we're going to come forward with this NIL bill that's going to go through in 2023 that we started to
Mhm.
evolve our curriculum, right? Florida accelerated the timeline, but California kind of set the stage for, hey, financial education is important, but we need to talk about legal education. We need to talk about business side of this. We need to talk about life skills, taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how things kind of evolved, if you will.
Man, yeah, California, Florida, California, Florida. All right, so
Yeah.
with everything that we're hearing around NIL deals, what should athletes ultimately be asking in this negotiation process? 'Cause I know we talked a little bit earlier about that. So what are some things they should be considering, Rashad?
So I think it starts a little bit before that because I think our process, our methodology is DDMC, and that's our formal process because it's a journey, right? So we talk about decision making, due diligence, money, and contracts. And decision making is huge because you don't have to participate, right? I tell people all the time, this is something that is an opportunity, but if you are not prepared or if you are not equipped, it can be a distraction. Now, when I say
Mm,
not prepared or not equipped, I think of two types of NIL, right? There's the NIL where you get paid for your performance on the field, and there's the NIL that you actually do commercial deals off the field. So,
most
being paid for
definitely.
your performance on the field, by all means, you should be paid for that because that is the nature of being a student, being an athlete, being a collegiate athlete in this era, right? You are
Mm,
going to perform, you're going to show up. But the challenge or the question mark is if you want to tap into additional resources, I'm sure you've probably seen or heard the theme of a lot of athletes similar to, I want to say, Gronk, I'm forgetting Beast Mode, Marshawn Lynch.
oh yeah,
There are people that are specifically trying to say, hey, I only want to spend my commercial NIL. I don't want to spend
most
my
definitely.
actual salary,
Yeah.
right? So if you're somebody that
Uh-huh,
wants to tap
uh-huh.
into the commercial side, we think that there's a very different process in terms of what you should consider and how you should participate. But setting that aside, determining which version of NIL you want to participate in is important. And then we talk about, the people and organizations you want to associate with. But as it pertains to, and I'm assuming this is your question, but please correct me if I'm wrong. As it
Uh-huh.
pertains to signing with the school or signing with the collective and the different questions or the different conversations people are having around how should you negotiate, what should you do, what are some major considerations as it pertains to that, the contracts are evolving. I think that the court case on Monday with House versus NCAA is also
Mhm.
going to represent a huge timeline and a shift. Right? We've seen and I've heard about contracts that are front loading money to basically be basically get absorbed by the contract. So basically, there's a lot of terms, excuse me, by the court case. So there's terms within the court case that say after July 1, you have a salary cap, right? So the schools have a salary cap
Mhm.
of paying out $20.5 million. But programs are front loading contracts now. So for people that are in the basketball transfer portal, they're paying them now so that they can somewhat avoid that being under the guise of, hey, that's being included in the 20.5 million, because most of that money at a football school is going to go to the football team, and then you're not leaving a lot of room for basketball, right? So
Oh, wow.
at this point, their negotiation tactics are a little bit different because they're trying to avoid some of the oversight of the looming court case. But I know I'm
Mm.
jumping around a little bit,
Well,
but
wait, wait, wait,
negotiate.
wait, wait, wait,
Yeah,
wait,
let's
wait,
pause.
Rashad. I just want to get clear on this. So you're saying in some instances, some of the colleges or the collectives, you said, they're paying money up front so that that money doesn't count towards that 20.5 million you said to like building that roster.
Yeah, so the salary cap, it technically goes into effect on July 1, 2025, if the court case is
Wow.
approved. So if you set the expectation or you sign the contract earlier, the schools are presuming, they assume that, hey, this was outside of the scope of the court case. You know, they can lock down their roster for the next
Oh.
year, and then they'll have to deal with all the other things that come with building that roster, but they're not limited by that 20.5 million, because a lot of teams like, Ohio State, everybody, the rumor was, they had a $20 million roster. So if you think about
Hmm.
Ohio State, if they have a $20 million roster, that's only half a million for the rest of the athletic department. So if you can take care
Yeah.
of your men's and women's basketball team, then by being early or by signing these contracts now, by in virtue, you're upending that formality of the window starting July 1. So some people are trying to do that. I've heard rumors that does not absolve you from the reality of the scope or the duration of those contracts are going to
Mhm.
extend into that period. So then they would actually still be held accountable to that time frame. So that's just what's going on. But to get back to your original question, negotiation, I think that the challenge with what we're seeing today is there is no normal, there is no level of normalcy. There is an
Mhm.
expectation that quarterbacks have a going rate, but the biggest challenge in today's society with NIL is NIL deals are private information. Like, just think about it. No one
Mm.
knows how much Steph Curry was paid to be on Subway. Serena Williams was paid to be on Subway commercials. They talk
That's
about
true.
Noah Lyles and his deal with Adidas. They say it's mirroring what Usain Bolt got, and I think they say around $10 million. Sidney
Wow.
McLaughlin with New Balance, around $2 million has been the rumor. But when you are an independent contractor and when you are providing your name, image, and likeness, and you're not an employee, telling someone that they have to disclose the amount of money they were paid is I don't
Mhm.
want to say it's not normal in the US, right? So you, in
Yeah.
terms of negotiation, you really have to be careful because there's rumors, there's expectations of what people have done and what people see and what people hear. You go to On3 valuations and you can see a certain projection, but nobody really knows what people are getting paid because again, it's not public knowledge. You see the rosters for pro sports teams because they are employees. If you wanted to
Mm.
see and require athletes to have their NIL values or their pay for play NIL values posted, you would have to change, to me, you would have to change their status because NIL in a traditional sense is not something that is required to be disclosed. And that is what's making negotiation a little bit harder. Right. But
Mm.
there's a master class on negotiation that I think everyone could benefit from. And I think that with collegiate athletes, you know, there's, to me, whoever has more information is in control of that negotiation. So whether it's knowing what the budget is, knowing what other options and recruiting leverage they have relative to their peers, how long the window is, how long they can hold out, right? There's all these different factors that go into negotiation, but because there's so much misinformation and you're kind of doing it into a vacuum outside of potentially knowing what other peers have been paid on your team, it's really a hard thing to do and navigate in this space. So I know I
So
talked a lot, but hopefully that gives you some insights to the challenges that are facing collegiate athletes and
most
why,
definitely.
they're this is leading to why they're a little bit more curious of having an agent, but it's also the
Mhm.
agent qualifications and standards nowadays are non-existent, right? You have some of those top tier agents coming from the pro sports league down to the collegiate landscape, but there's also people just kind of stepping up and showing up as NIL agents that are trying to kind of make a name for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So Rashad, are the agents even like? Does it even make sense to get an agent for a collegiate athlete?
It depends, right? And I know that's not
Okay.
the best answer, but it depends means what is your relationship with your agent? And I always tell athletes this because we talk about building the team around you, right? Building a team around
Mhm.
you is important, but you need to understand who you're hiring and why you're hiring them, right? When you think about an agent in a traditional sense, there's a sports agent or a player agent who negotiates your player contract, right? Your negotiation with your actual sports team. And then there's typically commercial agents. Sometimes, and nowadays people are doing both. But I don't know that necessarily everybody has a skill set to do both because I think one heavily relies on strong relationships with in the pro world, GMs, owners, scouts, people that are basically pursuing player personnel, people that are looking after teams. But then on the commercial side, it's having those relationships with brands. And if you're thinking about that, the two are not the same, right? Somebody having a strong relationship with an owner or
Gotcha.
GM, and then somebody having a strong relationship with a Fortune 500 company. So defining what type of agent you want is important. But ultimately, the reason athletes are getting agents is because I think there is a knowledge gap of, hey, I want to outsource. And this is, I think, a lot of
Hmm.
um, in a lot of people's lives. Like once you get to a certain level, you want to outsource to someone that is an expert, and you want to allow them to use their expertise to maximize your value. Right? That's the thought process. But what I've
Gotcha.
seen is people that are hiring agents are hiring them after only interviewing one person. Right? We always talk about as a team, you don't know what you don't know. So if you meet with one person, then you now know either what you've read online and what this person has told you, and that is not enough perspective to make an informed decision. So we would encourage you to
Oh,
meet with at least two people, right? Because I went to
oh
college, I thought I
no.
had great coaches. I didn't know I had bad coaches until they got fired and I got new ones. I just assumed if you're a college coach, you got to be great. They got fired. I got new coaches my junior year. I didn't realize
Mm,
that
that's
I had
crazy.
coaches that were underserving me. So we always say one, understand why you're hiring this person and what role you want them to do, because that is huge. Accountability. This person works for you, but the dynamic of the relationship is different. This person may be 40, you may be 18, they may be twice your age. They can be older than your parents. They might be your
Uh,
same age. Some people are hiring a homie. Some people are hiring a homie because they don't want accountability. They want to be comfortable. They want to get to know you. But again, at
mm,
least take these meetings as lessons and interview at least two people to
for
understand
sure.
qualitatively, do you have a good rapport? Is this person someone that communicate effectively? Is this person
I like that.
somebody that just really fits? And then quantitatively, how much are they charging you? Are they organized? Are these things that you can really, the things that they say they're going to do, the technical things that they say they're going to do, can they do them?
Uh-huh.
And also competence, right? You got
Yeah.
to recognize that there's a process where I've done things and I interview the person, the staff, the actual referrals, the people
Mhm.
they work with, because to me,
Yeah.
again, you do all this homework in the beginning. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but at the end of the day, you're empowered in your decision, and you know you did the homework to where you can be confident that, hey, I did my best. If it didn't work out, that's just life. Some people,
That's
God's
true.
plan. That's just how it was supposed to be. But by doing that front end legwork, it gives you peace of mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Rashad, with all this going on with NIL, are the athletes worth the money that's taking place in the challenge? Are the athletes worth the money?
So that's a hard question, but I mean, you're worth what somebody's willing to pay you, right? Like, and when you think about it, like
Mm,
if you sell your house in a neighborhood and somebody willing to give you $1 million, you taking that $1 million, right? Like, like at the end of the day, again, because we are dealing with a vacuum of pricing information, because we don't have the ability to analyze everyone's value, um, they are worth the money people are willing to pay. The challenge is,
mm,
or not the challenge, the competitive landscape, the actual structure of college football, of college basketball, there's going to be a point, even the economy, right? Even the way the market's going, there's going to be a point where
Mm-hmm.
pricing and things will be adjusted due to, all right, we're going to regress towards the mean. We're going to regress towards what is normal because people are excited about NIL. People are like, oh, I can buy a team. I
Yeah.
can go
Yeah.
out and be the LA Dodgers, the New York Yankees of football. Like I can build a
Mm.
team, spend money and win. Like that formula has worked in some instances. And then you see the Ohio State example, that formula works, right? But what you're going to recognize is people are going to be like, wow, I paid Jonathan $1 million. I could have put $1 million and had a building on campus for the next 100 years, right? So people's appetite for how they spend their money will change if the results don't come. But I also think that we're going to see the structure of sport change, meaning, Carmelo Anthony was on a podcast the other day talking about the mid majors need to leave the NCAA tournament and do their own tournament where they have a pot of money that just allows all the mid majors to compete and
That
have a
makes sense.
competitive landscape. And that will take away the Cinderella story, the excitement, right? If you just got the NCAA tournament where it's just
Ooh.
all the P4s playing and no mid majors really kind of stepping into the scene, is that tournament as exciting, right? So when you separate that out, that changes the dynamic of, all right, we're not trying to win a national title. We're trying to win this title. And what is this title worth relative to the units and how much they get paid out? So the formulas will change within sport. And I think that will dictate, how much people get paid. Obviously, the payouts from the upcoming court case will dictate, all right,
Mm-hmm.
this is the
Yeah.
amount that we can effectively maintain or manage. But that's also why you're seeing creditors, private equity being brought into the landscape because schools cannot at this point really finance their operations at current capacity, right? When you think about
Makes
adding on
sense.
the $20.5 million, you think about back pay that's going to be owed out if this court case goes through. You think about all of the ongoing kind of expenses and the natural things that they operationally do. It's going to be it's all going to be kind of like, it's going to be kind of like a smack in the face in the beginning and a
Man.
reset. And so once you
Yeah.
see the adjustment to
Wow.
the future pay, back pay, salary cap, and everything else that's going on in the ecosystem. That's why you've seen, I want to say a few months ago, Indiana let go of like 20 people, right? Schools are adjusting and trying
Action.
to
Yeah.
prepare mostly for the fact that, hey, we know that our budgets are going to be out of whack for the first few years as we adjust, but they still have to be competitive. So again,
Man.
that question about is the money worth it? Are they worth it? They are. I mean, if they're willing to pay it, they're worth it. I think that the question that might make more sense, or when I think about are they worth it, is it sustainable? And I want to say at the current rate, it is not
Mm.
because there's not enough information. And the information may never be available because of, again, that whole thing about being an independent contractor and it being tied to NIL versus being an employee, but it will work itself out naturally.
All right. Well. Okay. I want to take a slight pivot, and since we're talking about misinformation, like has there ever been a have you ever had to help an athlete who have you ever had to help an athlete clean up a financial mess from a bad NIL decision?
So bad. So I don't get a lot of calls about bad NIL decisions. And so I think about it like this. Everybody talks about the 30 for 30 broke with Anton Walker, right? Everybody says, the stats from that 30 for 30 are still being echoed into eternity. Bad financial decisions are not typically publicized, right? Because nobody wants to own their mistakes. And it's like publicly you don't. And I'll just give an example. I made an investment to a company that went bankrupt, right? And so that's one of those things where I put in a small percentage of my money because when you make investments in private companies, you take on a lot of risk. The reason that is important to know is because as you accumulate money, as you become a public figure, people are going to approach you with ideas, business plans, suggestions. And so
Hmm.
I've had that experience, but I had enough knowledge to know that, like, hey, if I'm going to allocate something to this sector, it's going to be 2% of my portfolio because I don't want to take on that much risk. There's upside potential, but I don't want to not be able to sleep at night if it doesn't go well. So I just wanted to start with that. But the biggest scenario that I get and that I've received is people working with bad agents and them needing to find somebody else. So Family,
Mm.
SEC family called me a couple months ago. They reached out. They basically said, "Hey, we have an agent that is trying to manipulate the relationship dynamic of the mother and the daughter." Right. So
Wow.
this person, gymnast, really successful, highly successful, all SEC, a lot of accolades, and so not only were they trying to redirect how the payouts went, but the payouts in typically in an agent relationship, they could either go to the agent or they can go to the athlete, and then the athlete can pay the agent after, or the agent can pay the athlete after, right? So just depending on your preference, it doesn't have to be one way or the other. It's just a preference and how you basically decide to set up the business. But the agent didn't like the fact that the money was taking time to get processed. And like that's the thing with these NIL deals. You do the deal, you have to send an invoice, and then, and this is a commercial one, you do the deal, you have to send an invoice. Once you send the invoice, then you get paid. And so it was a thing where the agent
It's business.
felt like, all right, getting into it. And I believe that we learned that the agent was just new to the space and he didn't know the cash flow, right? Understanding the cash flow
Hmm.
as it pertains to signing a deal, to when you'll see money, and understanding your personal expenses, and not trying to stress out your clients. Didn't really understand the name of the game in terms of you sign that deal. Let's say you sign for $10,000, the deal gets paid out typically, most instances, 30 days post the actual completion of something that was in the scope of services. So if that's an appearance, you might get 2,000 of that 10,000 after the appearance, but the athlete has to submit an invoice. If the athlete's late submitting the invoice, then you get paid. So this person tried to manipulate the parent and the daughter, mother and the daughter, to where he wanted to actually own the rights to receive the money first so that he could expedite, the invoices and all these things so that he can get paid sooner. And so those
Right.
conversations happen because when we talk to athletes about due diligence and building out your team, we're talking to them about, are you asking the right questions when it pertains to hiring somebody? Are you conducting due diligence? And so my team, as a result, we built a platform because we recognize that people were not asking the right questions. People are so excited about NIL in this space that, again, they're hiring the first person typically that they
Question.
see that is the service provider. They're in the beginning, they were signing to the first companies that approached them and sponsors. So now we've seen that, the maturity of the, I would say, the high profile athletes, and then some of the athletes that have just been in the space and been experienced, they're saying no to companies. They're saying, hey, this is a great opportunity, but it's not a fit. Or this sounds like, you sound like a great person, but you're not a fit. So our company built a platform to help vet financial service providers, attorneys, anyone that is a third party in the NIL space,
Yeah.
because we think about it like TSA pre-check. We just want you to have confidence that this person has been vetted, that this person is to date, a person that is upstanding, and it doesn't prevent anything bad from happening. But just like TSA pre-check, it basically substantiates that, like, hey, you can have an expedited onboarding experience because this person has been vetted, they've been transparent, and we are confident, and that we have substantiated the information that they've provided to us. So again,
Mm.
I've seen agent manipulation. I haven't gotten any calls about people, messing up
Hmm.
their finances, but we have, I mean, all campuses have kids that, get credit cards and then they end up with $10,000 in DoorDash debt. And so we have to figure out, we
Oh,
have to create a plan to, how do we pay down our debt, because they wanted to build their credit, and effectively, they went to DoorDash every day, and so
oh my
there's a lot of
goodness.
those stories, but less about, I bought this and I had a mistake. Those are more personal in nature, but the normal ones pop up.
Yeah, yeah. I get. Do you think like it's finally hitting home, and do you think these athletes are starting to realize that they're their own business now, right? Or do you think they're still catching on to that mindset?
I think it's hitting home because a lot of schools are almost I don't want to say forcing them, because it's not. I mean, everybody has a choice, but
Yeah.
they're basically creating pathways to where you can create incorporate a business as soon as you get on campus, right? So this is one of the things that Luke Featherman on our team, our non-agent sports attorney, would talk about in more detail. But just establishing a business to protect your assets and the liability that comes along with particular engagements and things that you'll do. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is, without adjusting how your entity is taxed. Like, people think if you create an LLC, it's an automatic tax benefit where you don't have
Mm,
tax benefits as an individual. So as an
yeah.
individual, you still can, if you have business expenses, you still can write them off and you still can manage your expenses appropriately. I think people think like, oh, I got to get an LLC to write things off. You don't have to set up an LLC just to write things off if you're doing business activities as an independent contractor, right? That's a part of the
Information.
scope of work. But it is for protection. And then obviously as an entity, you can register it as an S corp, or you can change the designation to have increased benefits, but it's not automatically automatically initiated. So they definitely are having that mindset. Schools are stepping in to help on board and get that process. But I think also that is helpful. But again, one of the biggest challenges I think in the landscape is people doing too many things for athletes and them not doing it and owning it themselves.
Mm,
So if everybody
yeah.
keeps doing things, when you think about, and you can think about just workouts, meals. We know schools that still pay rent for athletes. Like they don't know who the landlord is. But again, that's the school trying to mitigate the
Oh,
risk of them not paying or being evicted, right?
man.
So to that point, if you're doing that, if you're setting up the businesses, there are definitely athletes that are astute, want to do it, but the schools that are doing it for everybody and kind of forcing them, I think they may be missing the boat on the value of what's there is being established for them. So I think that it's getting there for sure because
Mhm,
every
mhm.
class is smarter, right? Every class is watching the
This is
people in
true.
front of them and
This
they're
is
like,
very true.
"Oh, I'm learning something." Like I learned this from the team. Like they're learning something. So that's what's exciting to me is everybody is learning and they want to learn. Like we go to these
Mm.
meetings, you sit in a room. The biggest challenge now is you have some people that are here, and then you have some people that are here, right? Before
Oh,
when
wow.
NIL started, everybody was here in terms of, hey, what is NIL? How do I protect myself? How to review a contract? Now it's like, hey, I'm ready to invest. Hey, I
Mm,
got my first deal. I'm ready to actually start saving, putting some money aside, put my emergency fund aside. I feel like I have
uh-huh.
enough cash flow to where I can actually start investing. But there's people that are already like, well, I'm invested and I want to understand how to maximize this, or I want to diversify my portfolio. I want to do all these things, or and so that spectrum of where people
Uh-huh.
are has created
That's
some
great.
challenges if you go into a room and you try to talk to the room. Like we need more breakout sessions, and that's what we're doing on campuses. We need more breakout sessions. We need more individualized coaching, and so that's what we're really focused on. Because like NFL teams that we work with, at some point, you kind of everybody just kind of like separates, and so the information is getting there. They're intentional about seeking it. We just have to do a good job of just maximizing the opportunities that we are in front of them, that any
Mm.
educator is in front of them, just meeting them where they are, because some people are here and some people are here. So we just got to make sure we're conscious of that.
Yeah, and I think this is great, especially what you're talking about with, there being different levels of where the athletes are, but both of them are still in the spectrum of still wanting to get the education and still wanting to move forward. And Rashad, especially as we talk about information, I tell every student athlete that I believe that they need a podcast, because as we're talking about business and them moving forward and being able to put their message out there. So, I think this is a great opportunity and a great time for them really to own being the business, being the brand, and
Yeah.
really, moving a mission forward that they really believe in.
Yeah. And I think, John, I think one of the biggest things that I think is important about what you do and what you kind of mentioned is all athletes need to be able to communicate effectively and be comfortable on a screen. I think that has immense value, right? You would benefit from that, right? Now, are you going to do that? That's up to you. But I do think effective communication and being comfortable on screen is something that can amplify your value significantly. So I think to those points, I think we've seen it. We've seen the renaissance of podcasts from athletes and
Uh-huh.
um, influencers that are really tapping into this. And I had a call yesterday with with a talent manager, and she was saying that like athletes are trying to like ex athletes are trying to build their brands now. So like athletes that are post career are trying to build their brands now, and it's almost like the formula is get a podcast and then get brand deals, and then like so it's for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
athletes
I
that have
agree.
kind of the athletes that have kind of not stepped away from, but more so retired, right? That's the
Uh-huh.
formula, like taking back the content, taking back the experiences, and creating this community of like, hey, we know about ball, we know about this better than spectators that just watched and weren't in the locker rooms with us.
Most
So I think
definitely.
that we're seeing that on the back end. But I think to your point, if you can provide that insight on a consistent basis on the front end, and be on screen or on camera or on just
Mhm.
have your voice be an effective part of the society, I think that would be a
I
huge
love that.
for an athlete. Yeah.
Most definitely, most definitely. Y'all, we're gonna come back. We're gonna come right back with more from Rashad, but we're about to take a quick commercial break, and you'll see us right back in a moment with more Speaker Success in the Morning. Looking for an exciting workout that's not only fun but makes you feel alive? It's time to step up your fitness. Extreme Hip Hop with Treese, that's your answer. This isn't your typical workout. Extreme Hip Hop with Treese is an energizing step workout that combines simple moves with fresh beats, both old and new, creating an atmosphere that makes fitness exciting. With a focus on all elements of fitness, cardio, muscular conditioning, flexibility, and balance, you're guaranteed to burn calories and get addicted to the energy. Extreme becomes your safe space, which is a welcome environment where everyone is accepted. It's where you can let go of those worries of the world and focus on getting healthy. Ready to get energized? Join Extreme Hip Hop with Treese today. All right, y'all, we're here live, Speaker Success in the Morning. We're 41 minutes after the hour, and we're here in a virtual studio with Mr. Rashad Campbell. He's impacted over 50,000 athletes, and that number is continuing to grow. So Rashad, we talked a little bit about NIL. Now, Rashad, let's talk a little bit about tax season, right? Because April 14th is right around the corner. We're, what, 5 days
April
away.
15th.
April 15th. April 15th.
I was
Thank
going to
you,
correct
producer
them. Let
Britt.
them rock out. Let them rock out.
April 15th
No,
is
but you
right
got to
around the
tell them
corner.
early. You didn't say the 16th. The 14th, they good. They get it in by the 14th. It's nothing wrong with that. Give him. He just trying to make sure everybody was good.
So, so Rashad. Oh man, producer Britt, love producer Britt to death. So Rashad, as we just think about just with what's happening with NIL and these student athletes getting massive quantities of money, right? Massive quantities of money. What is one thing that they should consider as they're in this space, they're getting this money, and let's say they're not sure of what the like. Let me rephrase that. How do taxes work with their deals? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, as an independent contractor, which I would argue 95, I want to say 99, but predominantly, majority of them are independent contractors. And as an independent contractor, you fill out a W-9, and
Mm-hmm.
then that just basically provides a company, organization, individual with your tax information, so your social security number, your EIN, as well as your um, address, right? So that's one of the biggest challenges. They don't write the correct address down because, as you know, transfer portal, you transferring your 1099 might go to your address at, let's say you was at UCLA, now you're at USC, you're at your 1099 at the end of the year may go to the wrong place. So making sure that you put down the correct address or putting down the address of a parent or guardian is huge. So that's what is on the W-9. After that, what happens is when they receive their payment, their compensation, and the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing is you get compensated. Everything has value, right? Unless somebody tells you it's a gift, you have to understand the fair market value of something. So a lot of times they talk about people giving things away. If they're giving it away and they are not
Mm-hmm.
asking for your tax information and then it is truly a gift, you don't have to worry about it. But if it is not
Oh.
acknowledged that it is a gift, that is a fair market value compensation. So the thing that you have to think about is, hey, I'm going to have to pay taxes on this. And the thought process is, a lot of times people talk about what's the example? Um, Cars when they get leases, they get like you get a
Oh,
car, you get a car lease. If that payment is $4,000, it's
Lord.
effectively like they handed you $4,000 and then you purchase something with $4,000. So that value of that
Oh my
payment is
goodness.
what they're going to show on your IRS statement, right? So
Mm.
a lot of times people get confused. They say, "Oh, I just got a car deal." Well, no, you really just got the compensation for that deal, and
Uh-huh.
effectively, you're going to be taxed for the value. So if you get a car deal, you have to come up with the amount of money to offset that particular tax payment, or the car deal
Wow.
has to be in addition to that car deal. They have to give you more money that is in excess of what that value is worth. So there's a few ways to kind of do it, but traditionally they
Mm-hmm.
fill out a W-9, They get
Yeah.
compensated 100% of what they receive. So, Jonathan, if you did a deal for $10,000, the company would send you $10,000. And as a result, because you're an independent contractor, they are saying that, hey, we sent a copy of the $10,000 receipt to you, that 1099, and a copy of the 1099 receipt to the IRS. You are responsible to pay your tax obligation. Because
Wow.
as an independent contractor, Jonathan, we don't know how many jobs you did, how much work you do. You might
True.
have 100 $10,000 checks, right? So that's something that you're going to deal with your tax professional, your accountant, your personal finance
Mm-hmm.
situation in the IRS. So you now need to take that amount, consolidate all of your income, and then
Uh-huh.
make the appropriate payment to the IRS. We encourage athletes that are receiving less than $400,000 to set aside 1/3 of everything that comes in, right? So
Okay.
10,000 comes in, put 3,500 to the side. We also say just put it in a tax savings account, right? You don't have to send it anywhere. You can open up another account right at your bank. If you don't trust yourself, put it in a different bank that you don't see every day. But you can open up a tax savings account, let that money sit, and you would ideally pay estimated quarterly tax payments. If you make more than 400,000, we say set aside 50%, right? You're going to have expenses, you're going to have things that offset,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you're going to have different types of deductions, but we want you to be overly conservative because there's nothing worse than tax time coming around. You're in the middle of March Madness, you're in the middle of spring ball, you're in the middle of spring season, and now you're
Yeah.
scrambling, distracted, overwhelmed because you are not prepared for the tax season.
Mm.
So that's just one of the biggest
Okay.
things is we always encourage them every deal you get it. We are creatures of habit. I've been on campuses where a kid told me, yeah, I got paid 200,000 last year. I'm gonna pay my taxes with my next NIL deal. But
Mm.
you probably got your next NIL deal earmarked just how you had that 200,000 that you ran through earmarked, right? So again,
That's my
it's not
question.
to
Yeah.
say you can't do it, but we're creatures of habit and we encourage you to set that money aside on an ongoing basis so that you can be
Mm.
prepared and not distracted when tax time rolls around.
So as all this, as all these finances are coming from different areas and they're getting different deals, uh, in terms of filing their taxes, they're just filing once a year, right? They don't have to do multiple files or anything like that. It's just once.
So you file once a year, but you can make payments throughout. So traditionally, independent contractors are encouraged to make estimated quarterly payments if you expect to have a net income of over $1,000. So that is the expectation. And the other
Mm.
question mark that comes up is, when do I need to file? As a self-employed individual, you need to file if your net income is more greater than $400. I know that sounds like what? That
Oh,
doesn't make any
wow.
sense, but that is the self-employment tax threshold because that is separate from a lot of people say, well, I thought it was 14,000. What's that 14,000 deduction? That's for W-2 employees, but self-employed individuals have to make sure they account for self-employment tax. So that threshold of $400 is one
Greater
that
than
throws
4.
everyone off, and you just have to
Man.
file. You may not owe anything, but that threshold is so low that some athletes are like, "Wait, what? I definitely made $1,000. I gotta actually report that." So yes, so a lot of times they get confused because the $600 threshold is what the expectation is for receiving a 1099. That's when a company or
Mm.
organization is obligated to send one out. But that threshold of 400 is what you need to file a tax return if your net income is higher than that. So file once a year. Estimated payments are encouraged. They don't have to be, but you're going to incur penalties and potentially fees if you do not make those payments in a timely manner.
Man, that's great information. That's really great information to know. And just considering that, well, let me just ask this: Can athletes deduct things like personal training or even like social media tools if these are things that they're using to promote their NIL brands that they're working with?
Yeah, so this is something I always say when we talk about educating athletes on qualified business expenses. The basis for the NCAA, the basis for the IRS is it necessary and is it ordinary and necessary to execute a business activity or basically generate revenue for your
Okay.
businesses. The one of the things we talk about, one of the examples I always give is a ring light. A ring light is, and we actually ask them like, hey, would this be something that you think is qualified or something that you would not think is qualified that you could write off or benefit from? I
Yeah.
would say a ring light is industry standard as it pertains to podcasts, as it pertains to good lighting for products and services. So
Mm-hmm.
we would say ordinary and necessary means go and buy the one that is a fair market value. Go buy a $50, $100 ring light. Don't go buy the production studio ring light that they got over at Disney that costs 10,000, right? So
Yeah.
you got to make sure that within the scope of what you're doing, it makes sense. But in terms of personal training, and that's a great question because I think that is becoming more and more integrated into the actual conversation because
It is.
your performance in the sport is indicative of how much you get paid, right? So if
Uh-huh.
that is indicative of how much revenue you can generate, that is something that I would believe, again, a tax professional would say there's a correlation between the revenue that you generate and your performance. So the things that help you enhance your performance would be something that would be ordinary and necessary to maintain your current level of income. So again, I would double check with a tax professional because personal training, gym memberships, and all these things have been brought up more recently as like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
can I write that off or is that something I could do? Because also you see guys in the off season getting specialized training, right? They're not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
going to Exos, but they are working with trainers and people that are charging, and as a result, they're making these different
Yeah.
payments. And so, if that's something they can deduct, absolutely, they should uh, basically inquire to confirm that that is allowed. But you want to be clear about this because by having these expenses, by investing in yourself, you can benefit yourself because you're lowering your overall tax obligation.
I like that. I like that. Man, Rashad, thank you, bro, so much for being here. We have to get ready to wrap up real soon. But I want to ask you, like, where do you see NIL going in the next few years?
uh, I I think that I don't know if I know where NIL is going. I think I know where collegiate athletics is going, and I
Mm,
don't know this, but I believe
hot take.
collegiate athletics is going to separate from schools, and what I mean by that is
Mm,
in a traditional sense, your education is going to be your education. I think
big.
that I think your origin or your organizations are going to basically say, hey, if you come to USC,
Uh-huh.
you can get an education, but your primarily focus is going to be football. And I think that the football side of it, they're going to extend the runway because think about this. One of the biggest things is think about this. If you, Jonathan, let's say you graduate, let's say you win a national championship, you played on Florida, you won a national championship,
Hmm.
and you try to go to the NBA and it doesn't work out, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
know we know that you are good enough to still play at a high level in college. So we are like as an industry, we are wasting we are missing out on your dominant play, right? There's a
Hmm.
benefit, there's a benefit, there's a cause and effect of having people around longer, right? When you think about COVID year,
Yeah.
red shirt year,
Hmm.
all of the years that were kind of added, we have these graduating seniors that are about 23, 24, 25 right now.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
kind of hurt the influx or the pipeline of younger guys. But I think if you
Uh-huh.
extend the runway of the actual time frame where athletes play a sport, I think you provide a unique ability to make more money and um, more value because it would just change the dynamic of teams having older rosters. And again, I just think that there's a huge value drop off when a kid goes from being a dominant player at a school and then is sitting on a couch in their hometown 2 years later because they didn't make it to the pros. So I think that in order
Oh,
for the
man.
NCAA to maximize value, they're going to structure in a way that why can't you stay in college for 8 years? Why can't I
Mm.
just think that's going to happen. I don't know, but I just think that
Nah,
when
I'm
we're
with you.
thinking
I'm
about
with you.
money, value, and also what we saw in the past couple of years is that people don't really care that people are transferring, right? People just focus on
Oh
what's the
my
logo on the
goodness.
chest, right? People like there
Oh,
are some
everywhere.
obviously there's some
Transferring
people that
everywhere.
are household names. Flauget is still at LSU. Manning
Hmm.
is still at Texas. Like certain people are still at certain schools, But for the most part, Dylan Gabriel came over from Oklahoma. He was at Oregon. Everybody was like, you wouldn't even know that he was at Oklahoma a year
Transfer
ago. Like,
portal is
people
it's
just
going
focus on
crazy.
the
It's going
W.
crazy right now.
Yeah. So they going crazy about the W. So it just made me realize, like, all right, if we don't care where these people come from and we just want a good quality product on the field, how do you
Mm-hmm.
guarantee a quality product? You guarantee a quality product by having older players on the field. And
Mm.
as a result, you'll have older players on the field in some situations, but you'll have younger players at other institutions, but the ones that are going to play are going to play. And so I just think that it would basically create uh, uh, an opportunity to, again, to maintain or generate more value from, and I don't like calling humans products, but a great product that is otherwise going to sit on a shelf. And so in order to maximize value, you allow this product, and you give this product a platform. And to me,
Mm.
that's how it changes. I don't know. that's just
Man,
that's
yeah,
just one
yeah,
thing.
Rashad. Yeah, I mean, but
But
man, Rashad, it's great to be able to get to hear from an expert in the space. This was very informative. You breaking down the information and the insight that you share with us. Please let the audience know where they can where they can find you, follow you, and connect with you.
yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of my personal information, Rashad Campbell SC is my Instagram, or Rashad Campbell on LinkedIn. And in addition to that, my company, we have two websites: advancednil.com. That's the platform where we focus on live education, virtual education, digital education, and the primary resources there. And then we also have Athlete NSBC, National Sports Business Clearinghouse. Athlete NSBC is the third party vetted platform that we talked about as it pertains to protecting the NIL ecosystem and that
Amazing.
transparency. That is one that we're picking up and really launching, sharing it with schools, getting the buy-in from the whole ecosystem. But Advanced NIL, Athlete NSBC, or Rashad Campbell, SC. Appreciate you, Jonathan.
All right, man. Appreciate you, Rashad. And everybody out there, y'all, just make sure that you stay tapped in with Speaker Success in the Morning by subscribing to the channel here. And family, remember, speak your success, believe in your greatness, and continue to create the life and business of your dreams. Why should you and why would you live any other